We may be live.
It's preparing to live stream the meeting.
This is the exciting part when everybody watches it again and they're like, what are they doing?
I know, it's great, isn't it? Technology. All right, we are live.
We're live. We're live on YouTube. We're streaming. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Aurora Theater Company. This is Aurora Connects. This is episode number 1 for Friday, March 27th, 2020. My name is Josh Costello. I am the artistic director of Aurora Theater Company, and I'm so glad that you've joined us for Aurora Connects. This is a new thing we're trying out. We are getting used to the technology, so thank you for your patience. Thank you for bearing with us. First of all, I want to say that our thoughts are with all of you during this pandemic. This is obviously affecting everybody in lots of different ways, but whether you or your loved ones are directly affected by the disease or whether you are sheltering in place and dealing with the social distancing and the social isolation that comes with that, we are thinking of you and we are trying to figure out what we can do as a theater company in this very strange and unprecedented time. A theater, of course, depends on people all coming together in the same place to share in the act of communal imagination that brings a play to life. And we cannot do that right now because of this shelter-in-place order, because of this need to flatten the curve and slow the spread. And so we have been thinking about what can we do. We are an organization that is all about making connections with stories, making connections between the artists in our community and our audience. And we realize that we do now, thanks to this wonderful technology, have the ability to continue fulfilling our mission of connecting our artists and our audience, even when we cannot do it in person. And so we started Aurora Connects as a way to continue doing that, to have a regular time, Fridays at 4 p.m., where you can come on our YouTube channel, or you could watch it afterwards if you like, but I love it when people watch it live, to join us for this virtual salon, this online happy hour. I'm drinking a beer in my Impact Theater mug, and share with us stories about theater and ideas about theater. We'll be doing all kinds of things. We're still figuring it all out. But today I'm really happy to be able to have you here and to have some lovely guests, which I will introduce in a moment. First of all, I want to introduce the rest of the Aurora staff who is on the call right now. Monique Williams is the Associate Artistic Director. Hi, Dawn. Say something so they can see you.
Hey, it's me, Dawn. I'm here.
Dawn recently directed our really fantastic production of Bull in a China Shop. Dawn, can you say a couple words about yourself and then introduce Amanda?
Sure thing. So it's me, pals, Dawn Monique Williams. I'm joining the call from my house in Oakland, California, which sits on the land of the Ohlone people.
Thank you.
And I'm excited to be here. I look forward to these Friday happy hours. I am drinking a non-alcoholic beverage in my magical mug. And I won't say what it is because it makes me feel a little childish. But I'm thrilled to introduce you all to Aurora's production manager, Amanda Mason, who will tell you a little bit more about how you can join us in the Q&A.
Hi, everybody. I have a martini.
Yeah.
And I am following along on YouTube as well as our Facebook page. If you want to say something, I will try and relay those. If we have some highs from a bunch of folks already. So please feel free to keep chatting on YouTube and I will read questions as we get them.
Thank you, Amanda. Yeah, so if you have thoughts, if you have questions, if you have ideas for what you'd like to see us talk about on this episode or on a future episode, please let us know there. Dawn, can you please talk about what we've been doing with Cameron and if any of our patrons are in need of assistance with technology these days?
Absolutely. So because we want you all to be able to join us every Friday for these live chats, but we also want you to be able to reach out to your loved ones and your family and stay in the know with Zoom and FaceTime and hanging out. We've decided that our technical director, Cameron, could make himself available to help our patrons with their tech needs. So if you need any assistance with learning how to use a new tool like Skype or Zoom, you can schedule a time with Cameron for him to call you and talk you through that. We've opened up a new email for this purpose at Aurora. So it's techsupport@auroratheater.org. That's techsupport@auroratheater.org. And Cameron, our tech director, will get back to you.
Yeah, so usually Cameron is building our sets, but of course he can't do that right now. So he's very good with these things, and it just makes such a big difference to stay connected to people, right? I've been talking a lot over Zoom and Hangouts with my family in Madrid and on the East Coast, and with friends all over the place, including just blocks away. And it really makes a big difference to see your loved ones and be able to have those conversations. My kids are talking to my parents. You know, it's all really wonderful and important. I also want to say, before we get to the actors who are with us in just a moment, that Aurora Theater Company is facing real financial hardship in this time, as are so many theater companies. We've had some really sad news from companies locally and nationally today, and I suspect there will be more to come. And Aurora is really committed to finding a way to weather this storm and to be able to come back and continue sharing the wonderful theater that we make and paying our artists and our staff a living wage in the Bay Area, which is no small thing in the best of times. But right now, when we have no ticket income, it's really, really hard, and we depend on the generosity of our supporters. It's been wonderful seeing how many of our subscribers, over 85%, have donated their tickets to Loot back to us rather than asking us for a refund. Thank you so much for that, and thank you to the people who've already reached out with additional donations. It makes a huge difference in our ability to get through this really difficult time. So if you are in a position where you're able to help us out a little bit, you can find a link to donate to Aurora Theater Company in the comments, or you can go to auroratheater.org and click on the donate link at the top right. Thank you so, so much for being part of our community and for supporting everything we do. And now we're going to introduce you to three marvelous actors. These are three actors who were scheduled to be in our production of Joe Orton's Loot that we had to cancel after the second day of rehearsal. And so I'm very pleased to introduce you to one actor that I think needs no introduction in the Bay Area, Danny Shea. Danny was last at Aurora in The Monster Builder by Amy Fried a couple years ago, and he was in a remarkable production of The Mystery of Irma Vep some time ago. Danny, welcome to Aurora Connects. And you're muted, Danny. So now, yeah, well, Danny's going to unmute himself. There he goes.
Thank you so much, Josh. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is my parrot Duffy, who's joined.
Hello, Duffy. And I want to introduce Susan Lynskey. Susan, this was Loot was going to be her first show with Aurora, but she has done lots of wonderful work in the Bay Area and beyond. Susan, welcome to Aurora Connects. And Susan,
on
mute
mute
as well.
On mute. That's a first.
There you go.
Hello. Hi, everybody.
And last but not least, Dean Leonard. This was also to be his Aurora premiere. We're so sorry we weren't able to make your Aurora premiere happen, Dean. There you go. And Dean is also a wonderful actor, done lots of stuff in the Bay Area, lots of stuff other places. Dean, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Dean, will you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and how you came to be here?
Sure. So I grew up in Berkeley, just a 10-minute walk away from Aurora, and saw many, many shows at the theater over the years. And then I moved out east to New York for college to study acting. And now I sort of do the bi-coastal thing, bouncing back and forth between the Bay Area and New York. But the last 4 or 5 shows that I've done have been in the San Francisco Bay Area. Yeah, and my drink of choice today is a juice box.
Excellent.
That tells everyone everything they need to know about each of us is what drink we chose.
Thank you, Dean. Susan, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
I, too, just recently found my bicoastal fluidity. It feels great. I had a DC life for a long time. That was my artistic home. And I just started putting some new feathers in my wings and flew out to OSF and found the West Coast and stayed up with Oregon Shakes, and then down to Berkeley Rep and started doing new work development here in the Bay Area with Magic and Virgin Play Festival and a few plays with Berkeley Rep. And I just fell in love with it out here. and recently ventured into New York City for the first time in my whole life and career with a couple of off-Broadway shows. So it was a nice way to land. And I closed the show and got on an airplane and came out here to be in my premiere at Aurora. And here we are.
Here we are.
Here we are.
And Danny, thank you, Susan. Danny, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I came out to Berkeley when I was 22 to go to grad school at UC Berkeley. One of my professors was Bill Oliver, who was married to Barbara Oliver, who started the theater. I did a production of Comedy of Errors in grad school. I also did two Joe Orton plays while I was in grad school at Berkeley, directed them at that time. And Barbara hired me to direct Comedy of Errors, which I think was my first thing at Aurora before Mavep, or maybe your Mavep was first. I can't even remember, but those were all in the days when it was over at the City Club. And I work here. I work half the time probably out of town. I just came back from South Coast Rep, which is down in the LA area, doing a musical. Just got back a few weeks ago to get ready to start rehearsals for Lute. So yeah, that's about it for me.
All right. And we have a question, which is what we were about to get to anyway, which is what was it like? What were the first 2 days of rehearsal like? How did that go? How was the show going in those first 2 days? For any of you?
It was going well. Go, Susan. Go, Susan.
Susan, how about you? Why don't you tell us how it went? Yeah.
It was electric. It just, when you put a group of comedians in a room who just want to make other people laugh, it just was extraordinary. I came home from the first day of rehearsal and I went, oh, this feels amazing. I'll let others chime in. Maybe we'll just riff off of each other on that because we're all bursting to talk about that because there's an electricity in the room and it was visceral, It's just a smart, brilliant room, hearing about the design presentations and Tom Ross's vision for the show, being at Aurora and feeling the support from the first read through. And then the first moment we're at the table and we weren't even locked down at the table. Like we're reading and we're already up on our feet and starting to make things physical with this extraordinary language and the physical possibilities. Yeah, that was day one.
Yeah, you mentioned Tom Ross, and we should say Tom Ross was the director of Lute, and he was the artistic director for many years of Aurora Theater Company. I was his literary manager and artistic associate for 7 years before he stepped down, and I ended up becoming the artistic director. And this was his return after stepping down, his first show after stepping down, and it was such a sad day to have to cancel this production. He's been very excited and working on this production for a long time. But more thoughts about those first couple days, Dean or Danny?
Yeah, we were just, like Susan was saying, we were just starting to get on our feet and just starting to figure things out. Like I remember Susan, we were figuring out little physical stuff standing next to each other, like just starting to figure out what the physical life would be with our characters. Like those first sparks, the first ideas were just starting to sprout, even at the very beginning.
And Danny, will you tell us a little bit about Lute and about Joe Orton?
Sure. If you really want to know about Joe Orton and are lazy, I would say watch the movie Prick Up Your Ears, which is a film that was made in the early 80s starring Gary Oldman and Alfred Molina and Vanessa Redgrave. And Wally Shawn plays John Lahr, who wrote a very famous biography of Joe Orton, which is one of the best show business biographies I've ever read, also called Prick Up Your Ears, if you're a little less lazy. And if you really are sort of want to get like schoolish about it, there's also a published version of his diaries. So he had this very fantastic short life. There we go. They're filthy too. They are so filthy. So they can substitute as both kinds of reading. He had this short and extremely dramatic life. He was murdered by his boyfriend really, really early in his career. Lute was running in the West End, was a huge hit at the time that he was murdered. It was like, the hottest ticket in town in London. in his desk drawer in the room where he was murdered was an even better play. Some people think a more, slightly more mature play, not maybe as wicked and crazy as Loot, but it's like another awesome play called What the Butler Saw. So yeah, and I felt an affinity with him weirdly because he's gay and badly behaved, but kind of loves old-fashioned or late English language and stuff like that. So I've had this affinity since I was very young. Loot. So Loot was his first full-length Boffo hit, and for very good reason because it's so well written, so perfectly constructed, and really, really scathing about the society that Orton lived in 1960s London, which was pretended to be hip, but also it was illegal to be gay. It was all plays had to be censored by the Lord Chancellor, a censorship office in London that really dates back to Shakespeare's time, although it was discontinued shortly after Orton died. And it's also so timely for today because like the character that I played, which is the role I wanted to play my whole life, as I think I told some of you guys, but my agent Victoria Morris, when I signed with her a million years ago, she said make a list of the people you want to work with, the directors you want to work with, the roles you want to do, and we'll keep track of it as we go along. And I did, and a lot of the roles I played, like Puck, for example. But Truscott, the role that I was cast in as Loot, was at the very top of my list. So it was like super thrilling to get to be in 2 days of rehearsal for it. No, it was thrilling I'm gonna do it again somewhere by hook or by crook. So, but he's a cop, and so it's like, and he's a complete, the worst, corrupt policeman and police brutality buffoon. So in some ways, it's super timely for our own moment.
Yeah.
How's that?
That's great. Thank you. And we had, for this production, Tom and Danny did some work tracking down some of the original dialogue from this play Loot that had been censored when it was first performed. And every production in America since then, and until quite recently, every production in England as well, used the censored version of the script, where Orton's original, even more scathing and naughty language had been excised. And it turns out that those original manuscripts are still in existence, many of them in the Orton archives at the University of Leicester in England. And Danny, you actually went to England and went to the archives and tracked down this previously censored material that had never been seen in the United States. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I got a grant from the University of California, where I'm on the faculty, University of California, Santa Cruz, for this project as my research. And so I went to the University of Leicester Library, their special reading room, and you make an appointment, and it's kind of hard to get into. It's very, very, lot of security around this stuff. But I had there's 6 scripts of Loot that from the time of before Orton died. Some of them are, like a huge pile of paper with the rewrites, all the rewrites stuck in they were getting daily. Like those of us who have worked on new plays, like where there's the pink sheets and the blue sheets and all that stuff. And this is barely, photocopies aren't really around when this is going on. There's some of 2 scripts that were typed on his typewriter, which was on his desk when he died. And there's a couple of others from various actors, prompt books and things like that went through it. So I went through all of those pretty meticulously, especially the one with all the written dialogue, because not only was he rewriting the way playwrights do to make the play better, he was also writing because they were in constant correspondence with this Lord Chancellor's office that I mentioned, saying, you have to take this out, you have to take that out. And then they would argue like back and forth letters about a certain word, like the word balls up. And then I went to the British Library as well to see the other side of that correspondence, which was super, super interesting. and it's still, I mean, even the people that, like, if you read John Lau's book, there's nobody knows exactly what came before what in terms of these scripts. So it's sort of like I would think doing work with Shakespeare folios, like which is the right one or what did he really mean? There's a little bit of that going on, even from a playwright who didn't sort of live to see his legacy appropriately curated.
And so you shared all that material that you found with Tom.
I took with my little cell phone, I took and a sad little tripod, I took so many photos. I took photos of many complete plays, as well as his very famous scrapbooks that he kept of his own productions, reveling much more in bad reviews than good reviews, because he did wicked scrapbook work for which he was sent to jail for doing scrapbook work on library books.
That he took out, yeah.
Prison with hard labor for 6 months for that by some asshole cop type person. Oops. What is this? YouTube, right? You can say anything, right? Anyway,
For a few more days.
Did I answer your question?
I think so. Well, yeah, but then what I was going to say is that then we got the Tom took all that research that you did and went through it and put together a version of the script that used much of the previously censored material, and that was our rehearsal script. And these lines had never before been performed in the United States, and we were really excited about that aspect of this production. It was a really historic thing that we were going to do, and I'm sure that production is going to happen sometime, and hopefully at Aurora, and hopefully we'll figure it out because it's just marvelous.
Yeah, Tom really, he was like the one that figured it all out, because
Yeah.
I basically handed him photocopies of pages and said good luck.
Dean, tell us a little bit about your character that you were to play in Loot, and if you have a favorite line or two, maybe what your favorite line was.
Yeah, so I was set to play Hal, which for people who don't know the plot of Loot, there's two young thieves, kind of ne'er-do-well, young British lads, bachelors, who rob a bank, and where to stash the loot becomes the sort of beginning of a whole bunch of farcical shenanigans. And Hal is queer, and the level of how that queerness personifies is even more evident in the sort of the more complete version of the script that we had at our that we had access to, that we had sort of recreated. And I was, again, just starting in the first couple of days to figure out exactly how that queerness manifests, which was a really exciting thing to how I think, like Orton, is pretty shameless in his expression of himself. And to explore what that meant at that time was a fascinating endeavor to just start to figure out exactly how queerness would manifest in that context, and like sort of the beginning of, I guess, what would become pride in a way, the sort of being able to express oneself without that. It's a show about queerness that isn't necessarily about queer oppression. I mean, yes, there obviously are societal forces and Truscott and all, there are societal things that are very harmful to that, but there's also these people kind of living their best lives in a weird way. So exploring how that manifests in Hal was one of the great endeavors that we were just starting to do. Favorite line, Hal has something to Dennis, his fellow bachelor. What was it? That's typical of your upbringing, baby. Every luxury was lavished on you. Atheism, breastfeeding, circumcision. I had to make my own way. Stuff like that, which are like the again, Orton's genius to be able to come up with something that's so specific and slippery and just like, it's delicious. It's delicious food for an actor and an audience. So the play is full of that, almost overwhelmingly so, full of that kind of brilliant, specific use of words.
Absolutely. I'm going to ask the same question of Susan and Danny, but Dawn, there was a question from the comments. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, we have a viewer who's asking, are there copyright issues with changing the script? And of course, for plays that are copywritten, there are copyright issues. And what we had to do was, once Tom compiled the version of the script that he was interested in using, collaborating with Danny and working from those notes, we had to send it both to the licensing house, so the organization that gives us permission to do the script in the first place, and to the Orton estate. And the Orton estate really is the kind of final determination on, yes, you can do this, no, you cannot. So we had to send a very detailed list along with an annotated script, and we had to wait while they reviewed it meticulously. And ultimately they did give us permission, and then the licensing house will typically default to what the estate wants. So we had gone through the proper channels to get the legal permissions to do this really new version of Loot.
All right, thank you, Dawn. Susan, tell us about your character and any favorite lines you had.
I think what I love about Faye the most, I mean, the writing is exquisite, and for someone who loves words as much as I do, it's just, as Dean just said, it's delicious. I think what I love about Faye is not only is she a master of the double entendre, it becomes a triple, and then she reverses it. And what I love about her so much is that she's the smartest in the room, and at a time period where maybe a lot of other adventures in comedy were experiences, especially in physical comedy, may not have had representations of women all the time who were the smartest in the room. It's very exciting when Faye shows up on the page, because she's clearly the smartest in the room. And you also never know where she stands, which is a very exciting place for an actor to play in a character. She's absolutely telling the truth, and everything she says is an absolute lie. So not too different from the times we live in. But for me, that's what I loved about her the most, was getting the opportunity to be, how do you say it? So mercurial and so quixotic, and the smartest in the room.
How do you do that as an actor? I know it's we talk a lot about motivation and like making sense out of our character. And when you have a character that is like changing direction all the time, how do you build a consistent sort of through line for yourself?
I think it's what's great about the text, her journey is so clear. In the text, she's always in pursuit, dare I say, of the title of the play. She is so incredibly corrupt, and it's always the desire for the loot, whatever is the loot. And so what's exciting about this work is it turns on a dime, but the super objective that you were just talking about is always the same. So there's a moment in the play where she could, if she marries I don't want to, no spoiler alerts here. If she marries in one direction, she could make a lot of money, but in the middle of the play, another opportunity for an alliance arises, and is it more profitable? Well, then maybe she'll go in that direction. So what's really great with a terrific script is that the steps are pretty clear in the text.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about who this character is and how she functions in the plot? Like, can you give us maybe the little bit of the overall plot? We've got the two thieves who've stolen the loot. They are hiding the money in the coffin of one of their mother. Their mother has just died, and the coffin is in their house. And they hide the dead body of the mother in the closet and hide the loot in the coffin. And meanwhile, the inspector has shown up. So, Susan, how does your character fit into all that?
A serial killer. Yeah.
Of course.
A nurse, a devoted and caring nurse. And as she said, a mercy killer. I think there's a great line, which I will paraphrase, Joe Orton, I apologize, but if only I could practice euthanasia, I would do that. It's against my religion, so I murdered them outright. So it's pretty great. Yeah, so I function as the nurse who takes care of various people and
Yeah, and you
coffers
were
money in
taking
the
care of
play.
of mom while she was sick, and then now that she's dead, you're moving in
That's right.
on.
She's in a better place.
Yeah.
She's in a better place.
And so you might marry her husband, or perhaps one of the thieves. Yeah.
Exactly.
And Danny, tell us about Truscott. You told us a little bit already, but yeah.
Truscott is in some ways the opposite of Faye in that he's the dumbest person in the room. He's so stupid. But the cool thing is he's just the dumbest dumbest cop you could imagine in an old-fashioned farce, right? In like a Three Stooges movie almost. But his facility with the English language is better than Oscar Wilde's. His use of language and words like that.
That's a bold statement, Danny.
No, I think it's true. And so, but that combination, which isn't often put together, a really stupid person who has a genius facility with the English language is really rare. And so that's very funny. And Truscott is also in search of loot, but he's so dumb he can never quite figure out. He knows he's close, but can never zero in and get it. And as a matter of fact, at the end of the play, like the last scene, the Hal and his boyfriend and Faye, the evil nurse, know that unless they cut him in on the loot, they're gonna be busted. And so they're tiptoeing around bribery. And they say, Hal says, and you can jump in if you want to say, has your wife never yearned for excitement? And so he thinks for a minute, he says, she did once express a wish to see the windmills and tulip fields of Holland. That's the most exciting thing that she could think of. And then they sort of tiptoe around a little bit more well, your wife, is she an intelligent woman? She certainly needs more income, blah, blah, blah. And he's not getting it. And so finally he says, where is this Jesuitical twittering leading us? Which I think is definitely one of my favorite lines.
Excellent. Thank you, guys. So we're running a little short on time, but I want to hear a little bit about just as artists, as actors, what are you always looking for in a role? What are you always looking for as an artist? What is your maybe your philosophy of acting, or what are you thinking about when you're starting your process? What are you hoping to accomplish as an actor? If that's not too big of a question to start out with. Anybody want to sort of talk a little bit about your personal take on acting and why you do it, why you love it, what it means to you? That's too big of a question.
George II of England had his poet laureate was an actor named Colley Cibber, who also wrote a few restoration plays that are mostly, we don't know them very well. But he said that actors are fortune's unlicked whelps. Meaning we're the dog that didn't get enough milk at the mother's breast, the dog mother's breast. And so we're we need to be licked all over by strangers in a dark room. That's basically what it's about. It's and I think that's true, more or less true for every actor that I know, that there's not that their mothers were bad mothers. My mother was fantastic. She might be listening. So, but it's that there's some infection where you need something else going on.
Yeah. Let me ask, not to bring us down, but what was it like having 2 days of rehearsal and then having this mean old artistic director contact you and say, you know what, we have to shut it down? How did that? What were your reactions when that happened? And how are you coping now? How are you holding together now that we've been in this lockdown for a couple of weeks?
I think the part for me that was the most surreal was being halfway through a process in a way, if it had been canceled before we had started, it would have felt different. But the fact that we had, like we were saying, just began to sort of find what the rhythm of this might be, it felt so real, so surreal to then be like the next day, it was something that was half done, to be like, do I stop thinking about it? Do I continue thinking about it? Do I imagine what it might have been? Do I put all the books away? And again, something like this, like Orton, that has so much rich research material and, you know, literary criticism, and there's such a wonderful world around this play, and the play itself is so rich and so dynamic as well, that to then try to figure out, how do I live with this sort of half learned knowledge? That to me was the most surreal part, was that to figure out you can't go back, but you can't go forward, so where do you land, basically?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was devastated. I had been looking forward to doing this for almost a year, and you know, put aside almost all projects to make sure that I could come to San Francisco to do this work. I just finished a show in New York that was beautiful and difficult, and it was Bertolt Brecht's The Jewish Wife, and I was grateful to get to do that work for many social justice reasons, and then to get to come out here and make people laugh. I was so excited. And I think for me, dovetailing on the question that you just asked, Josh, about what do I love about being an actor the most, I think for me, it's the chance to collaborate. I love being a great scene partner because someone else is being a scene partner back. And I love the lab of rehearsal. And so we were beginning the lab work of rehearsal. And the thing that I couldn't wrap my head around in those early days is, well, wait a minute. We can't rehearse the play, and then maybe we could save it for if the curfew lifts. Or we could do a radio play version of this script and we could send it to our audiences, or we could, how can we create? How can we continue to do the thing we came to do, which was make people laugh? But now we're going to do it during a pandemic. And isn't that the greater need than we've ever known? And so it was that I didn't know how to navigate early on. But then, like actors are, right? We're the problem solvers. We're the ones who figure out how to survive it, how to find the laughter and the hope. I think as actors, we have the capacity for incredible hope and telling stories. And so starting to get together with other actors in this medium, starting to create here, starting to bring back the connectivity. And sometimes it's around reading another script together, or creating a moment, you know, a little minute play, or connecting with a new person online that you've never, you know, met before in dialogue, like we're doing right now. I think that's igniting the hope that we all have and the need to create. You know, we're the ones who create in the attics when there were curfews, and we're the storytellers when the bars are closed. And, you know, I think igniting that in each and every one of us is something that I find incredible joy in, and our resilience, and in the service of, which is why I think we really do this. And so I think that's it for me.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you. And I think that's it for this episode. I think that's a great way to go out. Thank you all so much for joining us. Dean Leonard, Danny Shea, Susan Lynskey, thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys taking the time and sharing your thoughts and your experience with us and with our audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Be safe, be well.
Thank you. So I want to remind everybody that we have this offer of technical assistance. It's really important to connect with people. And if you need help getting Hangouts or Skype or Zoom or FaceTime working, please let us know. Techsupport@auroratheater.org. Again, please, if you are able to donate to Aurora Theater Company, it will make a big difference to us. You can go to the website, hit the button at the top right. If you'd rather talk to somebody over the phone about that, you can email Kendra at kjohnson@auroratheater.org. And we are accepting checks as well. We're not in the office to pick up the mail every day, but we do go in once a week. So if you want to mail us a check, we will happily accept it. Please send us questions to answer or topics to discuss in future episodes. Ideas about what we can do with this, or other ideas for what you'd like to see Aurora do during this time of closure. We really would love to hear that. Next week, we will be talking about our 2020-2021 season, our 29th season. We're very excited to share that with all of you and really looking forward to opening our doors again. Dawn, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Amanda, thank you so much as well. Everybody, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next week, Friday at 4 p.m. for episode 2 of Aurora Connects. Thank you so much for staying connected, everybody. Thank you.